In the study of philosophy, one of the greatest figures in history was Al Farabi. His full name, Abu Nasr Muhammad ibn Muhammad Al Farabi, who was a Persian philosopher, mathematician. He was an alchemist and many other abilities that he possessed. We know that he was born approximately in the year 872 and he passed away in 950, 951 approximately. He was the first Muslim philosopher who got a holistic approach of the study of philosophy. In previous centuries, many other philosophers specialized in specific branches of philosophy such as logic, ethics, metaphysics, but Al Farabi combined all of them in a very impressive manner in which he was able to compile, study, and write many works of the different sciences that compose the study of philosophical topics. We know very little about his life, besides that he was the Persian. Perhaps his surname indicates that he came from the city of Faraf in Khurasan, in the area or modern day Afghanistan. Others say that he perhaps came from the city of Fayraf in Kazakhstan. And the idea is that we don't know for sure his place of birth, but for sure he was a Persian, because all of this was part of the Persian, and it was known that belonged to the Persian territories. He dealt with many subjects, as I said, including ethics, cosmology, metaphysics, logic, and much more. His reputation in philosophy was such that he was given the title the second master. Of course, the first one was Aristotle, who is considered the greatest philosopher of all times. But since the time of Aristotle, for someone to be known as the second master, that means that Al Farabi was really someone. He was a genius in his explanation of philosophy, in philosophical topics, his theories, as we will develop and explain in a short in this video. Also, we have to say that he exchanged knowledge with the peripatetic school of Baghdad, in which they mainly focused on commentaries of the works of Aristotle. Among his colleagues were Muslims, Christians. His disciples also were Muslims and Christians, because in matters of philosophy there is no division on religion or these topics, because scientific knowledge unites people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and Baghdad at the time was really the center of knowledge of the Islamic Golden Age. His reputation and his works are so important that even in later times we know that the greatest Jewish philosopher in medieval times from Andalusia, the great Maimonides, Musa ibn Maimun, got in fact into philosophy thanks to the works of Al Farabi. That was such, or the importance of his philosophical writings, that not only Muslims but also Christians and Jews and many others later on in the Latin world, in the universities, his works were studied for centuries. We know that he was an itinerant philosopher, meaning he traveled from city through city, looking for patrons, people who were able to sponsor his knowledge, his teaching, and he traveled through many countries. He was in Iraq, Egypt, Syria, and in fact was in Damascus in Syria, his last place where he lived, and he died, as I mentioned, in the year 950, 951, around that time. He is considered the most important of the early philosophers who wrote in Arabic, and mainly his works dealt with the philosophy of Aristotle, as I said, and very interesting. He wrote important commentary regarding the subject of determinism, and this is such an important aspect in the philosophy of Al Farabi that we know he dealt with such a whole topic, in which in his work commentary on the work of on interpretation by Aristotle, Al Farabi dealt to explain the subject of determinism, in which he explains that we don't know what awaits us in the future. We don't know the future, and since we don't know the future, that means nothing is written for us. We are the ones who write our own future. Therefore, if we don't know the future, we create our own future. Predestination doesn't exist. And it seems to be that if we don't know predestination, not even God knows what awaits us in the future, because there could be many options and we are the ones who develop or choose how our future will be open for us. And now this was a very bold claim, because we know that the belief in predestination is a very important aspect of the Islamic religion. In fact, predestination is one of the pillars of faith in Islam. And therefore, Al-Farabi was the subject of critics, and also to say that not even God perhaps knows what's written in the future was really a tough and bold claim. Now, this deserves a much deeper analysis that perhaps we could talk in a future video in order to explain more the standing point of Al-Farabi on this matter. But perhaps, as I said, this is a subject for another video. We know that Al-Farabi wrote works in which he explained, perhaps for example in his work The Attainment of Happiness, he explained the different branches of philosophy. As I said, he was the first who had this holistic approach of all the different sciences combined, and he laid for us the order in which we have to study these philosophical matters in order to achieve happiness, in which he, first of all, he puts logic, then physics, and then metaphysics, and after we have achieved these important subjects, then we dealt with matters of ethics or political philosophy, and in this area. But according to Al-Farabi, we have first to study the things that we can see and touch, the physical objects that are around us, and then we can move on as in a scale, up and up until we reach the metaphysical subjects, such as the first cause, as the philosophers like to call God. And he explains that this is necessary because, first of all, the nature of God is not something easy that could be understood or explained, therefore requires more deeper analysis and understanding, and we have to get to know the things that are around us, and then we can reach a higher level of philosophical or deeper analysis, which is not an easy to grasp by the human mind. And that's the order of the philosophical study and up to the metaphysical matters. It's important also to say that his commentaries on Aristotle's on metaphysics was even later on utilized or studied by Ibn Sina, Avicenna, and thanks to Al-Farabi's commentary, Avicenna was able to understand or grasp the meaning of such complicated work by Aristotle. Therefore, we can see that the works of Al-Farabi were later studied by such as the greatest philosophers in the Islamic world, such as I said, Ibn Sina, later on by Ibn Rushd, Averroes, Maimonides, and others. We have also to say that according to Al-Farabi, all of these different philosophical sciences are interlocked like a chain, that one can lead to another up to a scale in which we are able to attain the most important subjects in order to reach the level or attain the level of happiness for us human beings, in which we are able then to understand the nature of God. It's interesting also to explain that Al-Farabi developed a very important theory. It is the theory of the intellect. According to Al-Farabi, let me try to put it in a simple way, because it's such a complicated theory that lays or is built upon layers and layers of hundreds of philosophical questions and hundreds of years from the time of Plato, Aristotle, and the others. In the creation of the universe, first of all, we have God, according to Al Farabi. And God, for him, is pure thought. There's nothing physical. And from God, everything comes forth, because God is the force that moves everything, that sets everything in motion. Now, how does the theory of intellect works? According to Al Farabi, there is the first thought that emanates the first intellect, as he calls it. This first intellect then develops or divides into a series of spheres, and these circular spheres are in its own way have their own intellect, and each of these spheres that will, one coming from another, from the highest to the lesser magnitude or to the lesser spheres, up to the point in which we get to our planet. And within our planet we have is composed also of many other intellects, in which we human beings are, animals, and other forms of creation. All of these many spheres that come each from another, have their own intellect in itself. And now the importance with this theory, in this is what separates Al Farabi from the previous philosophers, as I mentioned, the idea or the theory of forms by Plato, and later on we have Aristotle and Plotinus and Al-Kindi and all the other ones. The difference with Al Farabi is that he says that this active intellect, the first cause, God, we could use this word, but he prefers to use the active intellect, constantly actualizes or updates our intellect, because our mind has the potential, it's in a state of potentiality, and with time can reach that level of actuality that is the attainment of truth, or the attainment of the actual knowledge. And therefore the mind has the potential. We have to reach the level of certainty, we have to reach the level of knowledge, which is a constant update of our intellect by the active intellect, which is the higher being, the creator God. And now, according to Al Farabi, in animals this works in a different way, because this active intellect is also not updating like us the mind to reach that level of potential up to the infinite, but in the case of animals is working on matter, making sure that the intellect in the animal will keep the animal always being a specific animal. For example, the intellect or the active intellect in a constant emanation in the case of animals is making sure that the male horse and a female horse, or the mare, when they get together, the descendant from them will be a horse, not an elephant or a tiger or a lion. The resulting will be a horse, and that way we have always, when you have a male and female horse and a mare got together, you will have horses always. Elephants got together, their descendant will be always elephants. Lions are lions, and each specific animal will keep always its form, shape, and there's always balance and order in creation and in the physical world. Now, for us human beings, the active intellect always emanates in a constant way into our intellect, which is in a state of potentiality to reach that level of actuality or the level of knowledge, certainty, the level of truth. Now, this is a process that could reach up to the infinite. It never ends, because that's why in modern terms we could explain this theory that we are reaching higher and higher levels of consciousness. And this is basically how the theory of the intellect, according to Al Farabi, works, and I have tried to explain it briefly. Also, he uses this theory to explain prophecy, what is a prophet to Al Farabi? How does prophecy work? Basically what he say is that a prophet is simply someone whose mind has fully been actualized or updated by the active intellect, the first cause, and once the prophet has reached that level of full actualization, full knowledge, the level of truth, then he can share this knowledge with his fellow human beings, with other people, mankind. And this is actually how knowledge can be then shared with others by or through prophecy. This is how he explained it. Among the works of Al Farabi, as we have seen, most of his work dealt with the commentaries on the works of Aristotle. He wrote many treatises also on logic, metaphysics, cosmology. He wrote treatises on mathematics, optics, geometry, music. This guy was also writing about music, how it works, the influence of music from a scientific way, everything related to such matters. He also wrote a letter on the intellect, in which he explains his famous theory on the intellect, and his contributions are very, very significant. So in a very brief and resumed way, I have tried to explain a little bit about who was Abu Nasr Muhammad ibn Muhammad al Farabi, the second master, the greatest philosopher after Aristotle, and without a doubt a point of reference in the study of philosophy, specifically the Islamic philosophy, and his works are still studied until our very day. I want to thank you so much for your attention. As always, don't forget to share this video, like, subscribe, and God willing, we'll see each other with more about history, philosophy, religion, and much more. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.